The bakery didn't look like much from the outside. Faded blue awning, old neon sign with the Y half lit, but the smell, cinnamon, sourdough, burnt coffee, drew people in like gravity. It was the kind of place you pass by 100 times without noticing, until you did. And once you did, you never really stopped noticing. Lila, 17, worked the opening shift every Saturday and Sunday. She wasn't the talkative type, didn't flirt with customers, didn't charm regulars, but she showed up early and made the place work. Her apron was always clean, even when her shoes weren't. She cleaned tables no one asked her to. She noticed things, like the golden retriever who waited outside the front door. Quiet, thin, rain or shine, always the same spot. Curled near the planter like a statue carved out of patience. No collar, no leash, just soft eyes and ribs that said too much. Lila had seen people ignore him, step over him, complain about him, but she watched and waited until one morning, just before the rush, she took one of the day-old blueberry muffins from the discount bin, slipped outside, crouched low, and tore it in half. The dog didn't jump, didn't lunge. He sniffed gently, then took it, like he was being polite. That's when it started. One muffin, every morning. She never told anyone, until she got caught. It was a Tuesday. Quiet, light drizzle. Sandra, the bakery manager, spotted her near the door, half-crouched, handing off a crust. Sandra stepped out with a paper towel and a forced smile. "You feeding that mutt again?" Lila stood up, startled. "He's not hurting anyone." Sandra crossed her arms. "He's a stray. He's dirty. It's bad for business." Lila's voice was small. "He waits. He doesn't even beg." Sandra snatched the rest of the muffin from Lila's hand. "You want to feed animals? Volunteer at a shelter. You're here to sell pastries, not hand them to the sidewalk." The door jingled behind them. Someone had just walked in. Sandra plastered on a new smile and spun around. "Good morning. We'll be right with you." But the man who entered didn't answer. He just looked out the window, at the dog curled under the rain gutter, then back at Lila. His hair was damp, his jacket dark, his face unmistakable. Keanu Reeves. He said nothing at first, just walked slowly to the counter, ordered a black coffee, paid in cash. Then, as Sandra handed him change, he looked at Lila and asked, "Do you feed him every day?" Lila blinked. "Only when I open." Keanu nodded once, quiet, then turned to Sandra and said, "Seems to me the place has a little soul left. You sure you want to scrape it out?" The room went still. Sandra didn't speak. And Keanu? He took his coffee, sat at the booth near the window, and watched the dog like he was watching an old friend. Sandra didn't say anything for the rest of the shift, not directly, but her silence said more than any scolding could. She banged the metal trays louder than usual, slapped price stickers on stale buns like they'd insulted her, and every time she passed Lila, her eyes narrowed just enough to say, "You embarrass me." Lila kept her head down, cleaned tables, restocked jam jars, smiled at customers who didn't look up from their phones. But every so often, her gaze drifted to the corner booth. Keanu was still there, black coffee, paperback book, hood pulled low, present but not performing. The kind of stillness that made the noise around him seem pointless. At 10:15, the dog stirred outside, stood, stretched his stiff legs, looked through the window, not desperate, not even expectant, just curious. Keanu noticed. Lila did too. She looked at the bin of broken biscotti near the espresso machine, then at Sandra, who was now slicing croissants with more force than necessary, and she hesitated. At 10:19, Keanu stood, walked back to the counter, set down his empty cup. "Thanks," he said softly, then turned to Lila, not Sandra. "You got a name?" She nodded. "Lila." "Lila," he repeated. "That's a good name. A beat. Don't lose it trying to be what someone else calls professional." Then he nodded once and left. Outside, he passed the dog, paused, looked down. The dog wagged once. Keanu crouched low, whispered something. Lila couldn't hear it, but the dog watched him with slow, trusting eyes. Then Keanu stood, adjusted his jacket, walked away. No grand gesture. No quote for Instagram. Just a quiet man who noticed who needed to be noticed. Back inside, Sandra finally spoke. "Don't let that get to your head." Lila turned. "What?" "He was being polite," Sandra said flatly. "That's what celebrities do. They charm the help." Lila stared at her for a long moment, then said quietly, "That didn't feel like charm." Sandra shook her head. "This is a business, not a rescue shelter. Stop acting like feeding a stray makes you Mother Teresa." That night, as Lila locked up, she stepped outside with a paper bag in hand. She sat on the sidewalk beside the planter. The dog was there. She opened the bag. Inside, one broken muffin, 2 pieces of leftover toast. She held out a piece. The dog came closer, and for the first time let her touch his head. Rough fur, warm ears, a heartbeat she could feel through her fingers. He didn't need her, but he allowed her to stay. And that was enough. The next morning, the rain had stopped, but the sidewalk was still damp. The smell of yeast and burnt edges crept out of the bakery vents and filled the block like a slow exhale. The dog was already there. Same spot, tail curled, eyes half closed. Lila brought him a corner of sourdough and sat beside him before clocking in. "Morning," she whispered. He blinked once, as if to say, "Same to you." Inside, the early rush had started. A group of yoga moms clustered near the pastry case, comparing phone wallpapers and talking too loudly. Lila moved quickly, clearing dishes, wiping fingerprints off the glass. Then the door chimed. Trouble walked in wearing gym gear and lip gloss. One of the regulars, Stacy, mid-30s, perfectly manicured, always in a rush but never out of opinions. She ordered her oat milk latte like it was a negotiation. Then she saw the dog and stopped. "What is that thing still doing out there?" she asked, voice too loud for 8:30 a.m. Sandra appeared from behind the espresso machine, like a summoned demon. "I've spoken to our staff about it," she said. "We're working on it." Stacy didn't lower her voice. "It's unhygienic. If that dog bites a child, you'll be liable. Or worse, if someone takes a picture and it gets online." Lila, stacking cups behind the counter, tensed. She didn't speak. Not yet, but her hands stopped moving. Stacy kept going. "I mean, this place already looks a little rough around the edges. You let dogs camp outside, people are going to think it's some sort of soup kitchen." One of the yoga moms chuckled. The dog shifted outside, sensing the energy, still didn't move, still didn't bark. He just watched. Then, without being asked, Lila stepped around the counter, walked to the front door, opened it, and stood there, facing Stacy. "He doesn't camp," Lila said, voice calm. "He waits." Stacy blinked. "Excuse me?" Lila pointed to the sidewalk. "He's not asking for anything. People give it. That's different." The room went quiet. Even the espresso machine seemed to hush itself. Sandra hissed from behind the counter. "Lila, back to work." But another voice cut in. From the back corner. Same booth. Same black coffee. Keanu Reeves. He'd come in unnoticed. Sat quietly with his book. Now he stood. "You're all worried about what the dog might do," he said evenly, "but he's been here every day. He hasn't hurt anyone. People have done more harm inside this building than he has out there." He turned to Stacy. "Are you really afraid of a dog? Or just afraid of what he reminds you of?" Stacy scoffed. Didn't answer. Didn't need to. She left without her latte. Keanu walked up to the counter, left a 10. Said to Lila, "Good timing." She smiled. "Thanks for backing me up." He shook his head. "You didn't need it." The next morning, the sidewalk outside the bakery had something new. Not trash. Not paw prints. Words, written in white chalk, just beside the planter where the dog always lay. "He's not in the way. He is the way." No signature. No decoration. Just those 9 words, slightly smudged by weather, but clear enough to read. Lila spotted it first. She looked at the dog. curled the same as ever, then glanced at the corner booth through the window. Empty. Inside, Sandra noticed too. She said nothing at first, just stared at it through narrowed eyes while wiping the counter a little harder than necessary. Customers filtered in. A college student crouched to take a photo of the chalk. A delivery guy read it aloud and nodded. Even the baker, the quiet one, smiled and left a biscuit by the planter on his smoke break. By noon, there were more messages. Tiny ones, written in colored chalk by school kids walking home. He's our neighbor. Be gentle. He already is. Don't kick what doesn't bark. Lila hadn't started it, but she didn't stop it either. Sandra snapped at 2:17 p.m. She stormed outside with a bucket of soapy water and a mop, scrubbed the chalk off the sidewalk like it had insulted her directly. Customers watched from inside. Lila froze, cloth still in her hand. The dog didn't move, even as water splashed near his paws. Even as Sandra muttered, "This isn't a protest zone. It's a place of business." The sidewalk was clean again, but emptier, like something had been erased that shouldn't have been. That evening, Lila stayed late, past closing, past when the last scone had been wrapped and the floors had been mopped. She stepped outside into the cooling air. The dog blinked at her. She crouched, rubbed his ear, then reached into her bag and pulled out a fresh stick of chalk. And she didn't write something big, just 3 words. Still here. Still. She left it there, just for him, just for her. The next day, Keanu came in just before the rain. No hoodie this time, just a plain gray coat, slightly worn at the collar. He carried a book under his arm, old, thick, corners frayed. Lila saw him before anyone else. She poured his coffee without asking. "Black, right?" He smiled. "Still." He sat at the corner booth. Same spot. Always. Outside. The dog was there too, tail curled around his paws, watching the wind stir trash across the sidewalk. Keanu didn't look out the window right away. Instead, he opened the book. A few minutes passed. Then he looked at Lila. "You got a break?" She glanced at the clock. 10 minutes. He nodded toward the chair across from him. She hesitated, then untied her apron. They sat in silence at first, the kind of silence people rush past. But Keanu didn't. Neither did she. Then he said, almost casually, "When I was 7, I found a dog like that." Lila looked up. He kept his eyes on the window. She was small, white, always dirty. "I named her Lemon. Even though I didn't have lemons, she just looked like she needed a sweet name." He took a sip. "My mom didn't let me bring her in. Said strays carry fleas, diseases. Said feeding her would make her stay." Lila said nothing. He continued, "I fed her anyway. Left toast behind the garbage bin. Scraps from school lunch. Once I gave her half a meatball sandwich and didn't eat for the rest of the day." Lila smiled, just barely. She waited for me every afternoon. Rain. Sunday. It didn't matter. A pause. Then his voice dropped softer. And then one day, she wasn't there. Lila looked at him. Keanu shrugged lightly. No body. No collar. Just gone. He folded the edge of his napkin between his fingers. I walked up and down the block for a week. Called her name. Checked alleys. A longer pause. I didn't cry. Not then. He looked at Lila. But I remember thinking, if someone else had fed her too, maybe she wouldn't have stopped waiting. Lila swallowed the lump in her throat. Outside, the dog blinked, looked right at her, right through the glass. Keanu stood, left a bill on the table, didn't take his change. "Some dogs," he said, "wait their whole life just to be seen." Then he walked out. No nod, no speech, just the sound of the door chime behind him. And the dog, he watched Keanu leave, then turned back to the door, and kept waiting. It started with a clipboard. Sandra kept glancing at it behind the register, checking the clock like she was waiting for a delivery. But it wasn't flour. It wasn't milk. It was a warning. Lila caught on when she overheard the quiet phone call near the back sink. "Yes, out front. He's there every morning. I don't want it dramatic. Just removed." Sandra ended the call with a clipped, "Thank you." Lila froze where she stood. Outside, the dog slept. Same corner, same posture, same trust. It wasn't fair to call him a stray anymore. He was part of the sidewalk now, like the planter or the doorbell chime or the scratch in the glass no one ever fixed. At 11:03 a.m., the white van pulled up. No markings, no lights, just intent. A man in a reflective vest stepped out. Clipboard, thick gloves, a looped leash on his belt. He didn't head for the door. He didn't knock. He walked toward the planter, straight toward the dog. Lila dropped the tray she was carrying. It clattered loud enough to stop conversation. She pushed through the door, apron still on. "Wait," she said. The man paused, surprised. "This your dog?" he asked. "He's not mine," she said, breath catching. "But he belongs here." "That's not how it works, miss." City's been called. Complaints on record. He stepped closer. The dog lifted his head, but didn't run, didn't move, just looked up with tired eyes that had seen this before. Lila moved between them, arms spread. "You don't need to take him. He's done nothing wrong." The man sighed. "Look, I don't make decisions. I follow orders." She shook her head. "I won't let you." "Are you interfering?" She opened her mouth. Then another voice cut in. Calm, clear, familiar. She's not interfering. She's protecting. Keanu Reeves, standing just behind her, hands in his coat pockets. The man blinked. "Who?" Keanu stepped forward. "I'll make it simple," he said. "I'll take the dog." Lila turned. "What?" "I'll foster him," Keanu said. "Feed him. Register him. Whatever box you need checked." The officer frowned. "That's not exactly how." "Unless you want to drag him away in front of 20 people holding phones," Keanu added softly, nodding at the gathering crowd. A few customers were already outside. One had her camera out. The man hesitated, then sighed. "Fine, but you're signing for him." Keanu nodded. "I sign for a lot of things." Lila knelt beside the dog. He stood slowly, looked at her, then at Keanu, then back. She stroked behind his ear. "You'll be okay," she whispered. "He knows how to see people." As the van drove off, Keanu took the leash loosely in one hand. The dog didn't resist, just walked beside him. Calm, loyal. Finally, he claimed. By Sunday, the dog was gone. But the sidewalk didn't forget. The planter felt emptier. The bricks held less warmth. Even the regulars noticed. Their glances lingered a little longer outside the bakery before coming in. No tail, no slow, steady gaze. Just a patch of sidewalk that used to feel like someone was there. Lila noticed more than anyone. She still brought the muffin. Still stepped outside at 7:10, paused, then tucked the food quietly behind the planter out of habit, before shaking her head and slipping it back in her pocket. Sandra, for once, said nothing. No snide comments. No "I told you so." No orders. She watched the space too, but didn't name it. She couldn't. By Tuesday, something appeared on the bricks. Another chalk message. But this time, not from Lila. It read, "Just because he's gone doesn't mean he wasn't real." Below it, a small drawing of a dog. Simple, childlike, honest. Customers began to notice. One left a flower beside it. Another a folded paper crane. A third, a regular who never spoke, slipped a milk bone under the edge of the planter. It was as if the dog had left a shape behind, and people were filling it with pieces of themselves. That afternoon, Keanu returned. He came alone. No dog, but his clothes were dusted with fur. He ordered as usual, sat down at his usual booth. Lila brought his coffee without being asked. He nodded. "Thank you." Then he looked out the window for a long time. Lila finally said it. "Is he okay?" Keanu nodded. "Sleeping by the heater when I left. Full belly, tail flicking in his sleep." She smiled. "That's good." He studied her face, then said, "You miss him?" She nodded. "I got used to knowing he was there. Like the bakery wasn't just a job anymore. It was part of something." Keanu took a sip. "Maybe it still is." Later that evening, after close, Lila stood outside by the chalk drawing, pulled her own stick of white from her apron, and beneath the drawing, she wrote, "This spot is for the quiet ones." That night, someone else added to it, different handwriting, just 2 words. I remember Wednesday morning. Lila was wiping the menu board when the bell over the door chimed. A woman entered, older, maybe mid-60s, wrapped in a deep green coat with brass buttons. She moved slowly, carefully, like she was used to people rushing around her. She clutched a worn envelope in one hand, didn't order anything, didn't sit, just walked straight to the counter where Lila stood. "You're the girl who fed the dog," the woman said. Lila blinked. "Sorry, the one who sat with him." "Outside." Lila nodded cautiously. "Yes." The woman opened the envelope, pulled out an old photo, faded but clear enough, a golden retriever, lying in a backyard full of dandelions. Same soft eyes, same fur, same calm. "I think he was mine once," the woman said. Lila's heart skipped. She stepped closer. The woman placed the photo gently on the counter. "His name was Jasper," she explained. 10 years ago, her son's dog, a rescue, timid but loyal, loved lying by the porch and staring at the road. Her son moved away. The house got quiet. Jasper grew restless. One day, the gate was left open, she said. He walked off. We searched, posted flyers. Nothing. Her voice trembled. But when I saw the chalk outside and the dog in the photo someone posted, I knew. Lila stared at the picture. "I think he was waiting to be remembered." The woman nodded, eyes glassy. "I just wanted to thank you for not turning away." She reached into her coat again. This time, she handed Lila a ribbon. Old, faded blue, a bit frayed. "This was his," she said, "from when he was adopted. If he's somewhere warm now, I think it belongs with you." Lila held the ribbon with both hands, soft as breath. "I'll keep it safe." When Keanu came in that afternoon, Lila told him, not the whole story, just his name was Jasper. Keanu smiled. A good name for a good dog. That night, after close, Lila tied the ribbon gently around the planter, right where he used to sit. She nodded it once, then again, so it wouldn't blow away. She stepped back, looked down, and whispered, "Welcome home, Jasper." By Friday, the planter wasn't just a planter anymore. It had become something else. A quiet kind of shrine. Not loud, not flashy, just real. There was the blue ribbon, tied carefully on the corner. A chalk drawing of a paw print, filled in with soft pink. A crumpled kid's drawing. A stick-figure girl beside a dog with a halo, labeled Jasper. Someone had even left a bag of treats, sealed with a note, for the next one who waits. No one took photos. No one posted hashtags. They just left things and walked away, like they wanted to say something but didn't need to be seen saying it. Lila noticed it all. She swept the sidewalk more carefully now, made sure nothing blew away. Sometimes she'd sit out there before her shift, just for a minute, just to remember. Keanu came by less often, but when he did, he always brought something small. A dog biscuit, a new chalk color. Once, just a quiet smile. They didn't always talk. They didn't need to. Then came the boy with the hoodie. Maybe 11, maybe 12. He stood near the planter for a long time, not moving. Lila was cleaning tables when she noticed him. She stepped outside. "Hey," she said softly. He didn't look at her, just said, "Is this where the dog was?" She nodded. "Yeah, his name was Jasper." The boy looked down. "I used to see him, on my way to school. I thought he was a statue or something." She smiled. "He kinda was." The boy pulled something from his pocket, a crumpled granola bar. He placed it gently on the brick ledge beside the planter, then wiped his nose on his sleeve. "I didn't get to say hi," he muttered. Lila didn't answer. She just stood with him, quiet, steady. After he left, she stayed out there until closing. That night, she added one more thing to the space, a small wooden sign she'd made herself, painted in white letters, for the quiet ones who wait and the kind ones who notice. Sandra saw it the next morning, didn't take it down, didn't say anything, just stared at it for a long time, then went back inside and left the dog tree on the sill without a word. The man showed up mid-morning. Leather jacket, worn boots, hands like he'd worked with machines or wood. The kind of guy who didn't talk much, but when he did, you listened. He stood near the planter, looked at the ribbon, the chalk, the kid's drawing, now carefully tucked into a plastic sleeve. Lila noticed him from the counter. He wasn't scrolling, wasn't filming, wasn't performing grief. He was remembering something. Eventually, he came in, ordered plain drip coffee, waited until there was no line, then asked, "You always had a dog bowl out there?" Lila shook her head. "No." The man nodded. "Used to pass by years ago. There was a dog out here then. Different one. Big black mutt. Sat the same way." Lila tilted her head. "Really?" "Yeah," he said. "Always in the shade. Never moved. Thought he belonged to one of the stores." He paused. Funny how some dogs claim the space just by being still. He drank his coffee at the window. Didn't stay long. Didn't leave anything. But as he walked out, he stopped beside the planter and scratched something gently into the wood of the bench with a key. Lila checked it after he left. Tiny, almost invisible, still watching. That afternoon, Keanu came in. He didn't sit, just stood by the counter, hands in pockets. "How's he doing?" he asked. Lila smiled. "Jasper's famous now." Keanu grinned. "He deserves it." She hesitated, then said, "Do you think he waited because he was hoping someone would claim him?" Keanu looked past her, out the window, at the space Jasper used to lie in, then back at her. "I think he waited because he knew someone would." Later, Lila pulled a new frame from her bag. Inside was a copy of Jasper's photo, printed from the one the older woman brought in. She placed it gently inside the window, just behind the planter. No caption, just his eyes. That soft, steady gaze, like he'd never really left. That night, it rained again, washed the chalk into pastel streaks. But the ribbon stayed. So did the sign. And in the morning, new chalk appeared, this time in yellow. Someone always notices. Saturday morning. A boy stood outside the bakery, watching the planter like it might wake up and speak. He couldn't have been more than 9. Skinny arms, oversized backpack. He didn't knock, didn't come in, just stood there quietly for almost 20 minutes. Lila noticed. She stepped outside. "You okay?" she asked. He pointed to the picture in the window, Jasper's photo. "That's him, right?" Lila nodded. "I used to walk past here," the boy said. "He always looked at me. One time I waved. He didn't blink. He kicked at the edge of the curb. I didn't have lunch that day. But when I saw him, I felt better, like he was keeping me company, even if I didn't ask." Lila crouched beside him. "He did that for a lot of us." The boy looked at her, serious. "Do you think he waits for me now?" Lila blinked, then smiled. "I think he waits for anyone who needs him." The boy reached into his backpack and pulled out a plastic army figure, missing one arm, dirt scuffed across the helmet. He placed it next to the planter. "For protection," he said. Then he ran off before she could say thank you. Inside, Sandra watched from the register, her face unreadable. Then she picked up the broom and swept the front mat. No words, but her hand lingered near the glass as she looked out at the small army man. That night, after close, Lila sat on the bakery floor, pulled her bag beside her. Inside, Jasper's ribbon, still soft, still holding warmth. She held it in her hands for a long time, then reached into the side pocket and pulled out a new one. Same color, slightly brighter. She'd found it at the craft store 2 days ago. She tied it into a simple knot, not to replace the old one, to continue it. The next morning, she arrived early. A different boy, maybe 14, nervous eyes, was already sitting on the planter edge. He stood up fast when he saw her. "I'm not bothering anything," he said quickly. Lila smiled. Do you want to help me put something up? He blinked. Me? She handed him the new ribbon. It goes here now, she said. Jasper always made room. The boy took it slowly, tied it to the iron leg of the bench. Not perfect, but full of care. And as the street came to life, with coffee orders and barking traffic and the buzz of city routine, that one spot remained still, held together by chalk and kindness. And the people who kept coming back. Monday morning, the bakery opened like always. Soft jazz on the speaker, trays lined up, the same flickering neon, way above the door. But something was different. Lila noticed it as soon as she arrived. There was a ladder out front, a man with a drill, and Sandra, holding a small rectangular plaque in her hands. Not flashy, just brushed metal, black letters. She saw Lila and looked almost embarrassed. This isn't permanent, she said quickly. Just something people were asking about. She handed it over. Lila read it slowly. This corner is dedicated to the quiet ones who wait, and the kind ones who see them. In memory of Jasper, the plaque was mounted beneath the bakery's name, beside the window. Not high, not loud, but where people would see it as they walked in. Every day, a few regulars stopped to stare. One man tipped his hat to the planter. Someone left a chew toy. Another added fresh chalk beneath the drawing of the paw. Thanks for keeping watch. You belonged here. Some things never bark, but they speak anyway. Inside, Lila made coffee with a calmness she hadn't felt before. She tied her apron slower, moved with purpose, smiled at the silence between conversations. And then Keanu walked in. No jacket this time, just jeans, boots, and a pause in his step as he saw the plaque. He didn't smile right away. He stood there for a long second. Then looked at Lila and nodded. That's a good place for him. She poured his coffee without a word, set it on the counter. He took it gently, like it might spill something more than liquid. I think he changed more than this block, he said softly. Lila looked toward the window. Sometimes you don't need to move to make people see you. He raised a cup. To those who wait. She raised an invisible one back. To those who notice. By closing time, the sun hit the plaque just right, lit the letters gold, made it look like Jasper was still lying there, tail curled, guarding something only he understood. And in the silence that followed, as the last bell jingled and the chairs were stacked, Lila sat for a moment at the corner booth, the one Keanu always used. She didn't open a book, didn't check her phone. She just looked out the window, at the spot where everything had changed, where nothing had barked, and everything had spoken. Sometimes the ones who never bark are the ones who teach us how to listen. He didn't need a name. He didn't need a voice, because one girl noticed, and one man made sure the world didn't forget it.